and guests, and I understand we are a couple short of a quorum, so we're not going to be able to adopt the minutes just yet, but I thought we would go ahead and start moving forward with a couple of the presentations so that we're not here too late. But Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll to see who is present at this time?
Senator Southworth, Representative Lawrence, Mr. Abel,
Here.
Mr. Adkins, Charles Byers, Jacqueline Coleman, Carol Henderson, John Hicks,
Here.
Brian Hicks,
Here.
Patsy Jackson,
Here.
Holly Johnson, Ryan Neff, Danny Rhodes, Representative Tate,
Here.
and Chairman Wheeler.
Here. Thank you very much. Well, let's, again, we'll come back to the minutes. Let's see. Looks like item number 3 is a Ms. Columbia follow-up from the May 17th, 2023 meeting regarding questions and amended capital plans. If you'd like to approach.
Yes.
Oh,
I'll present on those briefly. The two information items, the first, follow-up to May 17th, 2023, meeting board member questions, details 2 outstanding lines of questions posed by board members at the previous meeting and responses from the Energy and Environment and Education and Labor cabinets. The second, amended capital plans, details amendments to capital plans presented at the previous May board meeting. There was 1 project deletion from the Justice and Public Safety cabinet. And that concludes today's information items.
thank you, Ms. Columbia. Okay, number 4, we have a special report from the Commonwealth Office of Technology dealing with IT projects. If you would approach and begin your presentation, please. And if you wouldn't mind, please turn on the microphone and identify yourself for the record.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Day, and I'm the Executive Director of the Commonwealth Office of Technology and the Commonwealth's Chief Information Officer. Thank you for this opportunity to review and evaluate the capital IT projects of the executive branch and to share with you the results of that review today. The Commonwealth Office of Technology is a long handle. Generally, the agency is referred to as COT. So with your indulgence, I will use the acronym in my presentation. Next slide. COT's role. On odd-numbered years, executive branch agencies submit their requests for capital projects greater than $1 million for consideration to the Legislative Research Commission. The commission provides a listing of capital IT projects to COT to review to ensure that these requests maintain an enterprise focus. This enterprise focus is supported by statutes and administrative regulations that require 1, agencies to create IT project descriptions and identify business goals for capital projects prior to authorization of funding, and 2, COT to review those capital projects from an enterprise perspective and report quarterly on implementation progress to the legislature's Capital Projects and Bond Oversight Committee. COT has an electronic form for agencies to complete their specific project information and requires that the agencies attach electronically their IT project information, including total cost of ownership, which is a 5-year reflection of ongoing and recurring costs of the project, in addition to the implementation or project costs. All this information is used in the scoring. According to the Capital Planning Advisory Board instructions, COT's role is to develop an objective scoring process. We feel we have done so and are continuously evaluating the criteria to make sure it's relevant and appropriate. We are to invite agency representatives to present an overview of their requests and to score the requests. That has been done. And finally, to report such rankings to this board, which we are doing today. COT recruited scorers for the Capital Project Scoring Committee amongst state government information technology professionals. The committee was made up of 9 scorers. The goal is to get members from across the cabinets to get perspectives from a variety of backgrounds and agencies. This year we had scores from 5 cabinets and the Office of State Budget Director. We scheduled presentations by the requesting agency with the scoring committee and scored the projects during those presentations. There were 12 capital projects submitted and 12 scored. 3 additional IT projects were submitted, but not scored as they were deemed not capital IT projects. In the prior odd number year, there were 22 capital IT projects submitted for consideration, and in the odd number year before that, there were 22 capital IT projects. It is not unexpected that the number of capital IT project requests have declined as there is a shift in the marketplace for solutions in the cloud and away from buy and configure or build and run on-premise. At the Commonwealth, we run approximately 50% in the cloud. This details the scoring criteria are available on the COT website for anyone to review. It lists the criteria by business value and by risk factors, and provides the specifics of the criteria by score and the weight of each. This information is important for both the requester and the scorer to understand. This slide illustrates the business value criteria in order of their weight in the scoring. The total points available under business value is 400. My apologies, it was truncated in your presentation. Let's look at the criteria as listed on the slide. The most points awarded under service improvement and for the highest score, we're looking for automation of a manual process to improve service or enhancement of an already automated process where the project will yield significant improvement in business processes and improved service. And similarly, the criteria for improved quality of life for citizens. External requirements examines the project's dependency on other systems, complying with legislation, or required by litigation or some other external factor. In business case, we are looking for quantifiable success. As to strategic alignment, highest points are awarded for direct alignment with at least one initiative. And finally, the greater the total cost of ownership savings, the higher the score. Business value is given more weight than risk because risk case is why you do the projects, the primary reason for the project. However, all projects have some risk, and so we have to take that into consideration. The risk factors are listed on the right. Again, less points available. These are more objective. Does the project involve sensitive data and the ability to safeguard that data? Implementation cost. The higher the cost, the greater the risk. Complexity of the solution. Are the requirements clearly understood? Next, is there a defined implementation plan with a clear time frame to execute? And finally, availability of skill sets. Is the expertise to execute the project available internally? This next slide illustrates the scoring process. Again, following the instructions of this board, project requesters submit presentations, typically in the form of PowerPoint, and then present to the whole scoring committee, who scores the request during the presentation. There's also a question and answer part of the presentation for scorers to clarify any information. And then after all the presentations are made and the scoring is calculated, the scoring committee reconvenes and reviews the scores to discuss any outliers or material variances to the scoring to make sure all understood the scoring criteria, meaning as well as the particulars of the project. And this slide is a list of the projects by that rank and the related funding source. The scoring committee administrator then presents me with the results of the scoring committee's work. I review the scoring. I review the projects in general for a general understanding of the business case to consider any need for discussion with the scoring committee. I look for anything that might seem incongruent or needing further review or explanation. This year I found the rankings reasonable and have no additional recommendations for this board. In closing, I would like to say that it is well known that we have many legacy systems in state government in Kentucky and across the country. And the issue is not limited to the public sector, as the private sector struggles as well. And it has become more challenging because technology has moved so very fast in these last 20 years. And it has grown in complexity of platforms not even imagined when these legacy applications were created, like web browsers, low code, and bots. Like other capital investments, it is an ongoing effort to maintenance information technology systems. The two primary maintenance issues with IT in particular are, one, the ability to maintain the business processes that serve the citizens in new ways, like replacing in-person with online and mobile apps. And two, with this complexity, it is critically important to keep up with the demands of cybersecurity threats. Legacy applications, like the applications involved in these requests for funding, require modernization to keep up with the demands of modern service in a secure environment. Kentucky was early to the value of consolidation, having consolidated IT infrastructure 10 years ago, and it has served the Commonwealth well. It's not easy. Many states are still trying to figure it out. Once consolidated, we were able to modernize that infrastructure for the enterprise. And so at COT, we are fortunate to have a modern infrastructure for compute, memory, and storage. And we are modern in our computing devices like desktops and laptops that the staff across the Commonwealth use to run state government and serve citizens. This hardware and the software that runs the hardware are maintained through agreements with manufacturers and the product developers. It is updated, upgraded, and patched continuously to the latest version possible that can support the application. And thanks to additional funding, at COT, we are investing in the state-of-the-art cybersecurity risk management. Where we don't have modern infrastructure is where we have legacy applications, to be sure. And therefore, some of these legacy applications cannot take advantage of all the protections equally. Some applications are so old that the hardware that they run on can't be modernized until the application is modernized. Being responsible for the enterprise, we develop mitigating controls for these legacy situations to ensure the security on our network. And so modernizing these applications is important to COT too. At COT, we don't do the application development, but we provide the infrastructure the applications run on. So whether you work in the public or private sector, generally the infrastructure modernization is the more straightforward. Most people don't care what computer it runs on. They just want it to do the functions they need it to do. It's kind of like me in air travel. Whether Southwest flies a 737 or MD-80, I don't care. All I care is it does the function. It gets me from A to B and does so safely. In IT, how it functions is primarily driven by the application. The difficult part of modernizing is in the applications. Our legacy applications that process data and serve the citizens of the Commonwealth are where investment is so very needed. And so I thank you for the special attention to the capital IT projects.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Do any of the committee members have any questions?
Of course, have some.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Co-Chair Tate?
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. Thank you very much. And on the slide where it's talking about the 12 different projects, which so is there, you had also referenced that there is a website. Is there information regarding all of these 12 different projects on that website, or how do we gain information regarding, to me, $20 million is a lot to ask for, especially with just a line item. So I'd like to see at least a paragraph description of what that is.
I'd be happy to provide those for all. That's what. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I would love to see that. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Are these projects bonded or is that appropriation?
I'm going to have to.
You don't make that call?
I don't, sir.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ruth. Your number one ranked item is a pool called Legacy Modernization, and we've had in very recent years, we've had another one of those. Could you give some examples of some of the things that we already did, using that type of financing?
Thank you, Secretary Hicks, and I apologize that I didn't introduce my coworker, Carrie Welch, who's the Executive Director in the Commonwealth Office of Technology, and she can share some.
Sure. So as of right now, I serve as a liaison between the agencies and finance and the Office of the State Budget Director to help figure out what areas can leverage the legacy modernization funds. We were given $20 million in a prior request. We have about 1.9 million of that left. 10 million of that was automatically funneled during COVID to update the UI systems across various places that we desperately needed some modernization quickly. We have also completed some projects for the personnel cabinet. We no longer had support and maintenance with SAP, which is the back end for the Kentucky Human Resources Information System, which serves all employees, all retirees, everyone in the school districts. So we were able to use the legacy modernization funds to reestablish support and maintenance with SAP, get that system back up where it was compliant with all the latest and greatest security and best practices. We've also done the same for the enterprise business intelligence piece, which is the back end reporting system for EMARS, as well as about 4,500 users across the Commonwealth that use that for business intelligence. We've done some modernizations within the finance cabinet when COVID hit. You know, the finance cabinet has about 2,000 employees, and we have 20 or 30 policies that we have paper, ink signatures that were required annually. And we were able to leverage existing enterprise solutions to build a solution to do electronic signatures for all of those policies. We can track those. A manager can look at those and see who has completed their acknowledgments, who has not. Trying to think of some others. We've done one for the Department of Local Government, the special purpose government entities for their reporting. They had a very old system that actually no longer worked. They went back to using paper. So we were able to come in and create a new application. So we do different things as needed. Sometimes it's just a re-platform, sometimes it's an upgrade, sometimes it's a complete rewrite. But we always come in, we look to see where we can leverage existing technologies that we have in the enterprise. And if that doesn't work, we will see what other agencies are using for that type of work. And if nothing else, we will write something in-house or post an RFP to secure a solution that will work for that agency, utilizing the funds.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. And next up, we have a review of executive branch agency plans. We have 6 state agencies providing overviews of the respective person for the board's review, and we will begin with the Department of Military Affairs, if you would like to approach. Do we have our quorum? I think we got 2 members.
Still missing one.
Okay. All right. If you would, before you begin, please identify yourselves for the record. And thank you for being here today.
Good afternoon, co-chairs Willer and Tate, excuse me, and Capital Plan Advisory Board. I'm Brigadier General Retired Charlie Jones, the Executive Director of Department of Military Affairs. On behalf of General Lamberton, we appreciate this opportunity to present this presentation today. To my immediate right, I've got Major General Retired Steve Collins, who is the Director of Bluegrass Station. To his immediate right, I've got Brigadier General Retired Steve King, who is our Federal Facilities Management Officer. And to his immediate right, I've got Mr. Joe Sanderson, who is the Director of Facilities Management for the Department of Military Affairs. Sir, the Department of Military Affairs is made up of a large multi-component workforce, DMA employees, 95 full-time state employees, 446 Department of Defense contractor state employees. DMA's federal workforce consists of 7,600 traditional and full-time Kentucky Army Guardsmen and Air Guardsmen. Of that, 764 full-time military, Army, and Air members. Of that, there's 712 Title 10 or Title 32 AGR soldiers and airmen in the Department of Military Affairs. We consist of 8,100 personnel total, operates 375 state-owned buildings, and is located on 14,000 152 acres of state property, of which 12,000 is dedicated to nothing but training areas for the Department of Military Affairs mission of supporting the Kentucky National Guard. This time I'll be followed by Mr. Joe Sanderson, the State Facilities Management Officer.
Joe Sanderson, Director of Facilities Division, Military Affairs. Stands to reason when you're flanked by three generals that the plumber would get the crappy chair. But it's all right, I know. But as you all are aware, that the maintenance of all our state-owned facilities is critical. And what makes the Department of Military Affairs unique is that in a time of crisis or natural disaster, Kentucky looks to these armories as a place of refuge and a place for the citizens to go. Also a place for the military to stage their deployment, whether it be to the surrounding area for that natural disaster, or to prepare for deployment to other countries to fight for our freedoms. So historically, our maintenance pool is lacking, but we've got a real shot in the arm this biennium, and it's so much appreciated. Because if you go back 3 bienniums, we were getting about $1 million a year, and we have over 300 buildings, 3 million square feet under roof, and 13,000 acres that we were trying to maintain with $1 million, which is almost impossible. Even when we get federal support that matches those state dollars, it's still hard to keep the places warm and the roofs from leaking. But we have after the $1 million a year, we end up getting a modernization pool. So we got $1 million for major maintenance and $1 million state funds for the modernization pool. And I'll explain the modernization pool here in a second. But all of the money that we've been getting, we just replace roofs, HVAC systems, and just do what we have to do. This past biennium, we got $4 million, which in the first year we were hit with a requirement that we used $2.5 million for a major renovation, and the federal government actually put in $3 million. So we were able to stand a 200 soldier unit from scratch with those funds, and we have a very nice facility, just about complete. And those 200 soldiers are new, and it's good for the economy in the state too. But that still leaves our buildings that are pretty old out in the state that require upgrades, replacements, because a lot of them have the original systems in them. So we appreciate very much this biennium's shot in the arm, and I think with about 5 more bienniums like this one, we might be able to get back where we need to be. But we have about 2,500 unfunded work orders in our system, and it's about $50 million that's right now unfunded. So you can see it takes everything we can get just to try to catch up. There's also about things break every day. So there's between 11% and 15% annually of new work orders that get into that system. So I appreciate the opportunity. I do want to, I'll make sure I didn't leave something out. Oh yeah, the modernization pool is the maintenance pool is about, we can get up to 50% federal match. The modernization pool, we get 75% federal match. And so the reason you have a difference in the pools is basically the state money is the same, but the federal side, if they have a requirement for a new unit that needs an expanded compound, or they now they've got a new requirement where they have to have lactation rooms in the armories for nursing mothers, and then also there's the windows. When these single pane windows need replacing, we have to comply with anti-terrorism force protection requirements, which those windows cost a lot more. Of course, you know, in the event of an emergency, when the citizens have to come into our facility, they're a lot safer because of that. The other pool, maintenance pool, is for the Kentucky Youth Challenge. We have 2 facilities that this pool takes care of, one in Fort Knox, the other in Harlan. The Harlan is a state-owned facility. Both facilities are very old and need repairs every day. But the Harlan, both facilities are unique in that they house teenagers that require special conditions, and also they house the cadre that take care of them. So we feed them, house them, everything in those facilities. So the life safety and health is critical in those buildings. We also want to give a shout out to Secretary Johnson and Finance Cabinet, because every year we lean forward and we design these projects and have them sitting on the shelf, because at a moment's notice, General King can get a call from National Guard Bureau and say, hey, Florida didn't execute their money. Can y'all execute $3 million today? Well, with the help of the Finance Cabinet and being able to award those projects, get them bid out and award them, and it takes a lot of time. But with our partnership, we have just about doubled the amount of projects that we do in the state because of that partnership. So if I don't have any questions, I'll turn over to General King.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Steve King. I'm the Construction and Facility Management Officer for the Kentucky National Guard, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the board this afternoon. And following up on some of Joe's comments, our annual funding plan on the federal side is about $12 million annually to support all of our facilities. And after you reduce the operating fixed costs associated with that, we have about $5.5 million available for the capital construction improvements. However, last year we executed over $24 million, and of that amount, $14 million went directly into capital construction, and excuse me, to match available state maintenance and repair as well as state modernization funds. The result is that the state is getting $3.11 for every dollar they're spending on maintenance and repair of our facilities and our inventory. If you average that over the past 4 years, we're getting about $3.50 per every dollar the state's spending. And if you look at certain programs, such as our energy program, that number is $6.90 per dollar over the last 4 years. And that's largely due to us being able to target 100% federally supported locations, and speaks to some of our ability to reach out and grab year-end funds. And again, thanks to the Finance Cabinet for their support on that matter. Couldn't do it without them, and in fact at NGB they refer to that as the Kentucky model, and very well known, very well renowned for that. I referenced the modernization pools and specifically appreciate the amount allotted DMA, as those funds enable us to target our other energy projects. I mentioned that we maximized our 100% federally funded locations, and we really over the last couple of years we've turned our attention toward our locations that require state match, such as our armories and readiness centers. The cumulative effect is that we now have a generating capacity of 3.6 million kilowatt hours of electricity annually. The good news about that is that we spent less last year in FY22 than we did in 2011 on utilities, after having added almost 700,000 square feet of facilities and having seen our average utility rate grow from 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour to 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And that amounts to about $450,000 annually in cost avoidance. And if you look at the total scope of that program, that's been about $2.8 million in cost avoidance. We have not had to pay in utilities as a result of that. So, these savings are directly attributable to not only our energy production efforts, but also our energy reduction efforts associated with our capital improvement projects. In short, Joe touched on the fact that our armories and our infrastructure is aging. We've got 53 armories and readiness centers and 15 vehicle maintenance shops across the state with an average age of 45 years. The facilities were built from 1948 through the 1990s, were essentially built for an all-male Army, and we've upgraded and added female latrines and showers to over half of those, but we still have a lot of work to do. So we've still got roughly 28 armories that still need improvements to get them up to modern standards, as well as about seven of our vehicle maintenance shops. And a focus, obviously those aren't our only inventory, but a focus on those because these are the primary facilities, as Joe touched on, that are our staging points. When we muster our soldiers for the 92,350 personnel days that they executed last year. And this was in support of missions such as the Western Kentucky tornado response, the Eastern Kentucky flood response, winter storm response, COVID-19 support, water relief efforts to Marion County, as well as mission support to recurring commitments such as the Kentucky Derby, Thunder over Louisville, and Riverfest. So we greatly appreciate the funding support we receive. It is critical to meeting our total mission requirement to have every soldier ready in our formations and for the state and national emergencies that we focus on. So that said, I thank you, and I'll turn it over to General Collins.
Can you go to the last slide? The deck. Steve Collins. I'm the director of Bluegrass Station. And you know that thing about generals, it's different than priests. When priests retire, they still have power. When generals retire, they get another job. So we've all got other jobs, and we appreciate that we're able to serve the Commonwealth, continue to serve the Commonwealth. I'd like to talk a little bit about a proposal for a public-private partnership to build an airport and air park adjacent to Bluegrass Station. The numbers you see there are big numbers, and the source of those numbers are from the consultant report that was ordered by the regular session 2022. The big takeaway from that report is there's an appetite out there by the P3 community. The people want to finance this. People want to invest in this. They believe that it's achievable, and our consultant has those contacts that have put confidence in that. Another confidence would be the $55 million appropriation. This would set the program on confident footing for negotiating with these P3 developers for the best return on investment for the Commonwealth. Now, this money could be repaid by the P3 developer. The Commonwealth could choose to leave it in there, depending on the arrangement and the return on investment that's negotiated. As justification for the project, there's a public aviation need. The business climate is all in. The proximity to Bluegrass Station that already has a large industrial park and a large presence, and the greenfield conditions all favor the project, especially in the eyes of the P3 investors. These attributes are supported by feasibility studies, by the aviation system, by the Central Kentucky Competitiveness Plan or Initiative, and of course by the consultant's report itself. The project is considered a game changer by many, and in many ways. For general aviation, it adds an 8,000-foot runway. For economic development, it adds a large industrial aerospace and industrial park. And for our national military, it adds global reach and an improved aircraft modification capability. We appreciate the board's time in hearing this and look forward to the possibility of bringing this significant project to reality. Back to General Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our brief and been your questions.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Southworth.
couple of follow-ups, Mr. Chairman, if I can. On the $50 million, forget who mentioned, $50 million in total unfunded work project or work orders. And then there was a reference to the annual rolling addition to that, approximately in the 11 to 15% range. So I'm doing math on that. So I've got a single digit of $1 million that we keep adding every year. I'm looking through these projects that we have currently pending and whatnot, and I don't have the budget memorized. How much did we give you last year? And I guess like kind of how many years of backlog did that take care of, so I get some better idea here?
Yes, Senator Southworth, thank you for that question. We got the $1 million. It's been about three bienniums ago, and that was for all of our major maintenance. And the biennium after that, I believe we got $1 million major maintenance and $1 million for the modernization pool, which is the 75-25 split. The next biennium, we've got $1.5 million major maintenance per year with no modernization dollars. And then this year, this biennium, we got $4 million per year for our major maintenance, and then $1 million per year for our modernization. So this biennium, we're catching up, but as you can tell by the $50 million backlog, we got a ways to go. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I guess let me clarify, because you just brought up the 75-25 match. So is the 50 million the total, and we really need 25 because all of these projects are 75 eligible, or are we talking about we need 50 million?
Yes, ma'am. The 50 million is the total.
So we need 12 and a half.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Plus the rolling 11-15% is also 75-25.
Yeah. Well, actually most all of the 50 million is a 50-50 because the major maintenance dollars are matched by the federal government when they have funds available up to 50%. The 75-25 is only for modernization projects that have a federal requirement tied to them, such as the expanding the compound or the lactation rooms or the anti-terrorism force protection windows, that type of stuff.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, a few more follow-ups. I'm still trying to chase this all the way down.
Go ahead.
So the 50 million in total outstanding work orders, is that maintenance, modernization, or combo?
That's I know it's all maintenance, and some of it is some modernization also, because what we'll do is there's some projects where you have to replace the plumbing. Well, while you're replacing the plumbing, part of that is installing a lactation room, which would be the 75. So
I got you. So it gets complicated.
Yeah.
Now, the list of the projects, though, in front of us, would you say is a characterization of the priorities or of the total? Because, I mean, I see some stuff here. It's like new projects and so forth. So I guess I'm trying to get a handle on how much you're asking for. We just stick to your script on how much you're asking for and not think for ourselves. Is that what you're saying?
Basically.
Okay.
Actually, we've asked for 10 million in the biennium. We had 10 this year if you combine the modernization and the maintenance. So I think what I stated is that if we can keep the current funding for a few more bienniums, then we could dig very deep into that 50 million backlog.
Okay. One final question, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the federal funds, and they call you and say Florida doesn't use their funds, so can you use money today? And you love that phone call. Is that something that's in the 75-25 range, or are we sitting in a situation where sometimes you get that phone call and you need to find the matching funds real quick, or do you have a pool of matchable funds for those excess federal calls you get?
So thank you for that question. I think that it's a combination of all of the above. So you look at your requirements and everything that we've set out in our annual plan for our minor construction is outlined as in the capital plan. And some of those projects are going to be 100% federally funded projects. Some of them are going to be 75%. Some of them are going to be 50-50. And to say that it shakes out one way or the other every year is different. So what we try to do is look for where the opportunities are and where's the low-hanging fruit to ensure that we maximize the amount of funding available, while at the same time trying to leverage all other capabilities that we have, such as existing state price contracts under the master agreement that are in place. So when they may look, we may have executed $24 million in federal dollars, but if they look at us and say, hey, we got 500,000 more here, can you execute that? We're not going to say no. We're going to figure out how to buy gravel, to pave roads, to do everything that we can on the federal projects in that case. So.
Okay, thank you.
And Senator Southworth, also, it's beneficial that our fiscal years don't line up exactly right. So at the end of the federal fiscal year, when they get this money, we have just gotten our allotment for our major maintenance that gives us a little good state match.
Excellent point. Thank you.
Ma'am, to further add to that, you'll get those calls on the 30th September to be executed by midnight.
Well, these projects, is our overall state of readiness for the Guard dependent on these being completed in a timely fashion?
The Guard's kind of an odd. Guard's kind of an odd entity. We kind of consider ourselves the stepchildren of the Army. We never really are fully funded to meet our current or total requirements to be as capable as we can, but we tend to prioritize the funding available to ensure that, number one, you look at the missions that are upcoming, both on the state and federal side, and make sure that the soldiers at that unit have everything they need to be prepared for that mission. So you prioritize based on known missions, and sometimes you react based on emerging requirements.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation.
Thank you.
I guess next up we have the Department of Veterans Affairs. Well, welcome, gentlemen, and you may please identify yourselves for the record, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman, chairpersons, co-chairpersons, member of the CPA Board. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Whitney Allen, Commissioner for Kentucky Department of Veteran Affairs. It gets scary when all the generals leave and leave everything else to the field grade officers. And on that, I would like to introduce my team and allies that are here today. Off to my left is my Deputy Commissioner, Juan Renal, retired Lieutenant Colonel, Armor Officer, and Iraqi and Afghan vet. On my right-hand side is Major retired U.S. Army Dr. Silas Session, Iraqi War Afghan veteran as well. He served as my Executive Director for Veteran Services. Over to my far right is the Navy guy, Mr. Mark Bowman, who's the Executive Director of my Veteran Centers. Behind me is my Chief of Staff, Nether Army veteran, retired Balkans veteran, Dwayne Edwards. If you can raise your hand up there, Chief. There you go. I also have Commissioner Sam Ruth, Department of Facilities and Support Services here as well, and Executive Director Scott Baker, Office of Facilities and Facility Development Efficiencies from the Finance Cabinet. Great allies to have. I never look at the office. I just know they help. So on that, we will move forward to the second slide. All right, bottom line, KDVA provides wraparound services for our veterans, our approximately 300,000 veterans and their families in the state. That's not even counting widows of veterans, dependents or kids of veterans that are deceased. Our sole purpose is to take care of those veterans and keep that promise we made to them when they served. We have over 800 employees at this time with 9 major facilities and cemeteries across the Commonwealth. So we're a very dispersed agency, and we are connected to every veteran in Kentucky and the surrounding region as well with our allies. We provide superior long-term care for those vulnerable veterans in our nursing home. We provide dignified interments for those veterans that have served. And we also provide those life-changing services, getting benefits and entitlements, and be lifelines or support, which includes our homeless veterans program. So we do a lot. We're very unique, and we're proud of what we do. Moving to the next slide, slide 3. That's our ask here, $29 million of investment into our facilities. Many of them are aging facilities, and there's a couple of expansion for our cemeteries. $29 million for 9 projects. And the bottom line you'll hear often, and hopefully a very quick brief, is safety for my people as well as the veterans we serve, and to continue to provide the quality services that we provide. Next slide, please. Right, our first request is for the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system replacement for Radcliffe Veterans Center. As you can see, bottom line is the effort of maintaining this current system takes away from other priorities. But most importantly, by replacing that system, we have a consistent climate control system and a safe environment for my employees and veteran residents at that Radcliffe Cemetery. So once again, $9 million. Next slide, please. All right, maintenance pool. We're asking for $2 million to help maintain those 9 major facilities that we have, the 5 cemeteries and the 4 veteran centers. Maintenance funds will help maintain those equipment that maintain those facilities and really maximize the life cycles of our facilities. Next slide, please. For our Radcliffe Veterans Center, fire system replacement. As you can see, is at the end of its life cycle of 20 years. The facility itself is 21 years old. So it's all about safety and getting and maintaining the federal and state standards when it comes to fire safety for our employees. Next slide, please. Our Eastern Veterans Center out in Hazard. Roof replacement, $1.5 million, end of its life cycle as well. As you can see, the notes exhibiting and buckling, trying to prevent further water damage. So again, we're investing in our aging facilities for the care and safety of our employees and veteran residents. Next slide. Exterior lighting replacement, THVC, or Thompson Hood Veterans Center, right down the road, is our oldest facility, 31 years old. So we're trying to get it to 21st standard. And this is a safety issue, ensuring people drive in and on and around our campus. The system itself has been around for 30 years and showed that it has deteriorated beyond repairs and shows some instability in its life. So we want to replace that. Again, $1.5 million. Moving to slide 9, please. Western Kentucky Veterans Center, roof replacement as well, end of its life cycle, and we want to prevent further damage to the facility. Next slide. Thompson Hood, again, $7 million interior and exterior renovation. Bottom line, again, oldest facility, 31 years old. Outstanding facility, but we need to get it up to the 21st century. Now, our care is up to 21st century and beyond. It's one of our best facilities and it's received awards, but we need to repair and get our facility up to standard. Next slide. expansion project. As you see, KVCC is our cemetery down at Radcliffe, Fort Knox. $2.5 million for a columbarium wall expansion. For those who don't know what that is, that's where we do our interment for cremation. Has become popular over the years and cheaper and preferred by many of our veterans these days. So we're now expanding to meet that demand with our most high op-tempo cemetery in the state. Next slide. Same as the West. It's our second most, and that's outside of Fort Campbell. So $2.5 million to add a second columbarium wall. Next slide. That is it for the 9 projects we're axing. Do you have any comments or questions?
Any questions? Okay, Co-Chair Tate has several questions.
So, thank you very much for this presentation and obviously for your service. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So for your Radcliffe facility, where you talked about the HVAC system needing to be replaced, can you remind me, how old is that building right now? It doesn't
yes,
seem
ma'am.
like it's been there very long.
No, it's 6 years old. It
6
came in
years.
operation in 2017.
Right, so we're already needing a replacement for the HVAC system, which seems like it's pretty quickly. So can you explain, at what point, how did it degrade so quickly for it just to be a 6-year-old system?
Yeah,
Or is-
sure.
Go ahead.
Mark, would you like to comment? Mhm.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we started experiencing problems, and with any new building, you expect some things to kind of break down, and you keep prepared and maintenance on them. But as time went on, especially in 2020 or 22, especially in June of 22, it really piqued our interest that we're having a little bit more than normal repairs going on, enough to say, okay, we need to look at this and see what's going on, because the maintenance was being completed. Certainly it was under warranty. Parts were being supplied, and we had to pay for the installation of those parts. But as time went on, it kept going on to a point where you said, we got to check into this. So we had an outside entity come in and look at this and say, what's going on? Because it should not be this way. And it turns out that their recommendation based on that, for whatever reason, this was a variable refrigerant system. And it was just having, whether it was who knows why it's having that failure. But the point is, we're spending a lot of money out of pocket to maintain current situation for our veterans. And the uniqueness of what we have to do, it's not unique to us, but it's unique to some, is we're highly regulated in that temperature control and to make sure that those people are safe. And the analysis by the external consultant was that, look, we can't really figure it out, but if you keep putting money into pots here and there, it's going to mount up very quickly. So the recommendation is for that replacement.
And was there a second opinion that was obtained?
No, the major consultant along with finance, they also had people that looked at it and tracked that with us. Okay. So we had a lot of experts looking at that. Yeah.
On a side note, so what's the capacity utilization of that facility right now?
It's 120 beds.
Right, but
Yes,
what
yes, ma'am.
utilization is it?
Yeah.
A 60%?
Yeah,
80%?
so I'll give you the exact number.
Okay.
So we actually are up to 51 there.
51%.
And yes, ma'am.
Is that still because of staffing?
Our staffing is showing some improvement. We're actually trending up with that because of the investment from the Commonwealth and collaboration with our partners. And so with that increase in staffing and filling vacancies, this becomes more as important because we're limited. We can't put our veterans in a situation that we can't assure that the environmental control there. So we have moved up since our efforts started in February with putting some resources toward filling those vacancies. And this will be a barrier if we don't resolve this, of moving into, what we're all about, and you all support this, is access for veterans, because that's what we're there for. That's what these investments are for, even sometimes unexpected investments. The Commonwealth's done a great job in investing and taking care of our veterans, and that's what we want to continue to do.
Okay. I could follow up on that, and I guess it's just the inner lawyer in me, but every time it seems like I constantly hear these presentations of the Commonwealth building buildings, and for some reason or another, within a very short period of time, there's a very identifiable problem going on. Have you all looked at attempting to get some compensation or damages out of the people that originally installed the HVA system? Since clearly it sounds like from what your testimony has been, these problems started within the first couple, 2 or 3 years of it being in there. I mean, obviously, I think the General Assembly will certainly step up to the plate to take care of our veterans, but I would think that we might be able to mitigate those costs somewhat by going after the contractor that apparently did some shoddy work.
Yes, sir. To respond to that from my perspective is probably out of my purview as an operator. But I think that potentially, I'm confident that every avenue is being researched and looked at. That's just outside of my scope of response for you. I'm sure
Who built the place and put in the HVAC system?
The Codell was the the general contractor, and then they had subcontractors that did that.
So we know who the sub was that put in the HVAC system that's failing within...
it's a matter of record, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will defer to finance or finance, who can answer some of those better than I can, if that's permissible.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes, sir. I'll defer the floor over to Director Baker, please.
Thank you all today. So what we discovered once we started into this process is that the VRF system that was installed there, again, operated fairly well the first few years with some issues, but not anything abnormally high until 2022 when it just collapsed.
Well, few years. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you here, but 6 years. I mean, that's
understandably,
nothing.
Per ASHRAE standards, this particular type system has a life cycle expected of 15 years. So I agree with your point that this is rather early for this to occur. What has happened is what this piece of equipment or these types of equipment were the VRF equipment was Samsung built, labeled for Trane. So it was through our Harshaw Trane rep bringing us Samsung equipment. Harshaw Trane no longer represents Samsung. They've dropped that line completely. And that particular line of Samsung, though they're still honoring their warranty, providing parts to us even as early as this last week, providing parts on the warranty that's going to be expiring soon, they're no longer being repped by that company. We're no longer putting in Samsung equipment anywhere. So truthfully, from all the research and everything our consultants have done, this is just simply a bad system with the Samsung equipment.
Well, who recommended it?
Well,
I mean, what kind of research?
we bid our projects based on low bid, and that's all of our.
Like we are getting. I mean,
all of our projects are. So it met the specifications. It met the criteria of the bid documents, and again, upon initial installation, initial commissioning, initial operations, while there were some issues, it wasn't that much adverse to what we normally see during that first 2 years of warranty period. It was, again, 5 years later, 6 years later, again, the equipment actually was started up in 2016, though we did not open the facility until 2017. The equipment warranty began in 2016. So while I mean, we all completely agree that the equipment should have lasted longer, but at this point, where does recourse lie?
With the people that put it in.
The manufacturer's still providing parts. The problem is we're having to pay, and the KDVA is having to pay to install those parts and to rectify the issue. So that's an additional burden to them. And again, probably the most important issue is the fact that we have space temperatures that fall out of OIG compliance very regularly as a result of failing systems. So that's an issue that we simply can't toy with, if you will. That's why the replacement system, as what we've designed, what our consultant has brought to us, is to totally remove VRF completely.
Well, who is the consultant this time?
The consultant that did the study and analysis is CMTA. Is who did the.
Is this the same people that put in the first system that was supposed to last 15 years?
No, sir. It's a different firm that we had go in and do the study on the remediation of what needed and the evaluation of the system. So originally, when it broke in 2022, we had Alpha Mechanical, who's one of the primary service providers for many of our facilities, come in and they performed their evaluation, felt as though they could get it working. And they worked diligently for about 3 months trying to make that happen. And then finally they said, no, everything is just failing. It's just failing everywhere. So that's when we brought CMTA in October of 22 for them to perform this evaluation and study. Their study came back in December, and based on the outcome of that, said that while we can continue replacing parts and continue doing these things, it's not the best use of funds because the failures are going to continue to happen.
Well, how much did the initial system cost?
I'm not sure because of the original budget. I don't remember.
We'll get you that answer.
I'll have to look that up because I don't know from the schedule of values from that original project cost what that line was as far as what the HVAC system
I'd like to know. If they're at, $9 million, and obviously I'm all about taking care of our veterans. This is not about that. It's about the Commonwealth getting the value for its bid. And it sounds like to me, if we had a 15-year system put in and it started failing after 2 or 3, it's just like lemon laws and other things. I would think that, maybe we need to negotiate a little bit better for people to back up their work in a situation like this.
The warranty provider of Samsung, even though Harshaw Train no longer reps them, Samsung has stayed engaged and is still providing warranty parts. The problem is their warranty does not include the labor, obviously, to install the
parts.
parts.
The systems collapse, why don't they come in and put a whole new system in and make this thing right?
Or have Train do it.
Or have Train do it.
Well, I do not think that would be feasible or achievable without long, lengthy litigation, because they're not liable under the contract necessarily past their warranty, that initial warranty period.
Well, we could fix it and then still sue them and try to get some of the money back.
Certainly an option. If I
just hate to walk away when we've got
not been participating and providing warranty services to date, then I think it would be different. But the fact that Samsung is still engaged as the warranty provider, still providing parts, it's simply from a KDVA operational standpoint, not something that we need to do long term. We've got to get out and get the right system in. So the VRF system, the variable refrigerant system type, is going away completely under this plan, and we're going back in with a 4-pipe hydronic system, water cooled system, like an old-fashioned, more traditional system, and away from the new technologies of the variable refrigerant.
That's good.
Yeah.
Go
So basically,
ahead,
you've talked a
Michelle.
lot about the parts that Samsung is honoring the parts. Can you give us a breakdown of how much it has cost up to this point for us to pay for those parts to be installed? Because it takes, it's $9 million is a lot for. I would think that a lot of labor would be entailed to get to the $9 million.
Right. So to date, the parts that have been provided by Samsung are a total of $183,000,
But they've
and the
provided
labor,
those?
yes, they provided those,
okay,
yes, ma'am,
okay.
and the labor that we have paid out to Alpha Mechanical since 7/6 of 22 is a little less than $200,000. That's what our labor cost has been for Alpha to exchange those parts, if you will.
And Alpha originally put the machines in?
No. Alpha's a service provider. They were not the original contractor that put the equipment in. Again, when the equipment went in, it was inspected, it was commissioned, all of those things happened, and again, it worked per the standards at the time. I honestly feel that the problem is the Samsung equipment just can't take the demand of a nursing facility. A VRF Samsung equipment or any VRF equipment in a nursing environment is not.
Well, it seems to me like the
recommended at this
contractor built the building should have known that too.
The contractor that built the building built it based on the plans and specs that were provided.
The person recommending the unit, if they.
So at the same time, and I agree. At the same time, we were designing. We had just finished another nursing facility here in the Commonwealth where we also used a VRF system, and that system was a different brand. and it's still operating today with what I would consider normal maintenance and operational upkeep. And that's a 100-bed facility just down in Glasgow for a different cabinet, but still a nursing facility that had a VRF system put in. Now, understanding there's two systems in these type buildings when you use VRF. There's an outdoor air makeup system that provides all the outdoor air to the facility, and then these VRF systems are just variable refrigerants that sit there and modulate the temperature in the space you're in, but they don't have any outdoor air. These are independent. So the outdoor air system, the primary outdoor air system at Radcliffe, is fine, and it will remain and not be touched. What this project is doing is, again, wing at a time as to not disrupt operations any more than we have to. We're going in, we'll be replacing, pulling out the VRF, putting in the 4-pipe hydronic system in that, and then moving patients over there, and then moving to the next wing of the facility in order to provide as least disruption to operations as we can, but yet maintain the new system and get it back in and installed. So I don't know, other than continue down the path of paying Alpha to replace parts and keep the system operating that way to maintain the standards that we have to for these patients. The best recourse is what we're recommending here.
So is Samsung giving you any indication that they won't be able to provide parts for the next 10 years?
I've not seen any indication that they will not be. Again, we had some concern with that when Train first dropped the line, because Train is who we primarily dealt with. But again, in Samsung's defense, I guess, in all of this, they have stayed engaged. And again, my understanding is we got parts Monday from Samsung for replacement. So they're staying. My concern there is when that warranty, that original warranty from installation, expires, and according to the Samsung website documentation, that's a 7-year warranty on their primary parts. So we're rapidly approaching that possibly expiring. Then that's where my real concern comes in with if they stop providing the parts, then obviously the cost to the facility to keep the facility temperatures maintained doubles. And we still have a system that on a really cold day or a really hot day, we can't maintain the OIG required temperatures for the clients that live there. And that's, again, first and foremost in everybody is obviously to take good care of the people we're taking care of. But that's something that we really can't do with this system at this time because of the constant breakdowns and so forth.
It seems kind of interesting to me that the use of the term warranty, because it appears to me like up to this point, at this point in time when they're not really warranting it anyway. Even though they're providing the parts, they're not, if they're charging us for installation of those parts, then what's the warranty? So it kind of seems like the warranty has already failed up to this, at this point. That's why I was asking if there was a risk of them not being able to provide the parts.
So our standard warranty is a 1-year contractor's builder's warranty. And that 1-year warranty covers everything, bumper to bumper, all labor, everything.
Which is already gone.
That was the first year. So once that warranty's expired, the only warranties that are remaining are the manufacturer's equipment warranties. And those warranties will vary per component in a lot of times. For some chillers and so forth, the valves may have 5 years and the compressor may have 10 years, whatever the case may be. So that is the warranty in which we're executing against, is the warranty of parts. It is a parts warranty because we no longer have not had a labor warranty for some time, for a number of years. Has there not been a labor warranty in place? Because that's not how our projects are bid or awarded or contracted in any form.
Senator Southworth.
This is all very interesting, and I'm not going to pretend to be a products liability expert by any stretch. It just sounds like that to me. But really, the bigger question I have as I'm listening to all of this is, we have a variety of members on this board that know a lot of different things about a lot of different things. But as I'm looking through the PowerPoint show here, there was not any mention of this in the PowerPoint show. And it took somebody who lives very close to that area to mention it. Unless I'm missing something, I could have not been paying attention. I was wondering, when were we going to find out before Representative Tate asked that this was a 6-year-old facility and the whole history of this?
I'm sorry, repeat that question, ma'am. I'm sorry.
The whole issue we're talking about right now, this Radcliffe Center, all came up after Representative Tate asked about the age of the building. I don't think it had been reflected in the materials here. Is it reflected anywhere in the materials?
No, we did not put the ages of the facilities in the slideshow itself.
Or
So-
any of the history of why this has been a total nightmare disaster and why we need $9 million for a essentially nearly new system and all that. None of that's in here anywhere.
Not in this particular piece, other than what we put in our capital plan. Has a little bit more details. We kept a good lean brief for discussions, and Director Baker has answered that question, as well as Director Bowman. There's no hidden agenda or any side. We're not sliding anything over. It was a straightforward brief, ma'am.
So it is detailed in the capital plan, what we've been discussing here. We just haven't been looking at it today.
Well, I take that back. No, had to catch me in my thought process here, but some of the details may not be in this plan at all, as in the different issues. But what we want and why we need it is in the capital plan, and it's straightforward, ma'am.
In the why we need it section, does it talk about the warranty and all this stuff that we've just discussed about its age and all that?
Well, we can confirm.
In
Go ahead.
the narrative, it explains.
In the narrative, it is.
It
Yeah.
speaks to the system really, and the fact of the recommendations. If we look at the capital plan narrative, it's not an extensive brief, and it does not go into the details that we mentioned today. It just talks about systemic failure, the need to protect the veterans, and the statutory requirements for that. And then certainly, as we've tried today, we'll answer any other questions that come up. But the narrative is more on spot to the system and the necessity of it for the function with which it was installed and needs to be fixed for access to veterans.
Sure, and I can appreciate staying on point there. I guess my comment would be in the future when we have issues that are this kind of egregious to what's going on, things you guys have been dealing with a nightmare on your hands for well over a year and it's gone before that, but specifically in this last 12 months you've been dealing with total nightmare. And when we get a PowerPoint and 10-minute briefing and a PowerPoint with a few slides, and I literally sit here like, well, I don't really have any questions. I mean, I just kind of heard about cemeteries and the veteran centers. And compared to last year was the sky is falling. All of these nursing facilities are getting ready to, go to pot and all. I mean, so I felt like we put some money in last year, and now this year I'm thinking, wow, they don't really have anything major going on. And then this all happens, and I didn't even know this was going on. So if you can maybe think through our perspective, we have no idea everything that you're dealing with, but we want to know those kind of details when you're coming here and say, okay, this is important. Here's why it's important. It's not my fault. It's not your fault that Samsung can't make a refrigerant, but we got to deal with it. And this is why time is of the essence. And that really helps us. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And also, you're all welcome anytime to visit any of my facilities and see what we do. And ask the questions, what are our challenges, and be enlightened when we come here to brief. Thank you.
I'd like to state I've heard nothing but good things about our facilities, and I commend you for their operation. And please do not think this is directed at you in that regard in any way. I think
no,
we're more
we do not
concerned
see it. It's
about
all
the fact
business.
that the Commonwealth is not getting its value for its money.
And I just want to add to what, I think whenever I was asking Miss Ruth earlier today for a paragraph description, those are some of the things that I would expect to see in a paragraph. We've got these little, just a sentence or two, when it would help me to understand the issues that you're having, to make sure that I am supporting a project that really needs an issue versus supporting a project that needs less of my support. So that would be the more information you can provide, the better off for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ma'am. And we're a learning organization, so we definitely would take that into account. Pending any other questions, I'd like to thank the board. I also like to thank the team, Director Baker. Thank you. I appreciate it. If there's any other questions or comments, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Kentucky Communications Network Authority. Gentlemen, welcome. If you could identify yourselves, and you may begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Doug Hendricks. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Communications Network Authority. With me is Mitch Powers. He is our controller. And we have two items that we're going to bring before the board today. Before we get started with that, though, I thought it'd be helpful if we just do a quick reminder of who we are. The Kentucky Wired Project is a 3,300-mile statewide broadband fiber optic network. It's in all 120 counties. It's approximately 3,300 miles of fiber optic attached to 80,000 poles statewide. Right now we serve state agencies and Kentucky community, our community colleges, KCTCS. We'll also be serving the public universities at some point in the future, hopefully soon. We have connected 425 sites to date. 39 of those are KCTCS locations. There's 764 sites targeted to be on the network when everything is moved on. Migrated is the term that you may have heard us use in the past. But keep in mind that that's a fluid number. As state agencies move, offices close, so the number will go up, it'll go down. COT may contact us and say, can you add this site? So that number will change. So the next time I appear in front of you, it could be 780 sites, or it could be 750 sites. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the map that we've been sharing since the beginning of the network. Just as a reminder, the red lines you see is the backbone, 288 fibers that goes across the state. The blue lines are the laterals that go into the individual counties, so you see where we do have a point of presence in each county. The shaded areas represent the geographic areas of our partners that we've worked with that have constructed and maintained those areas. So we've worked with local partners to build and maintain part of the network. Go to the next, please. So our first project is critical infrastructure upgrades. So in layman's terms, we need to update the equipment. Our contract recognizes that technology is always changing and improving. So as part of the contract, in 10-year intervals, we have to do what's called a refresh. We have to upgrade our equipment. That reflects the fact that things are going to change and that we need to keep our network up to date and provide the services that we are to people right now. It has to be, as you know, it has to be upgraded so that we maintain that performance levels that are required, speed, flexibility, and the redundancy that we need. What we presented to you is the first of 3 projects. This one's for $12.9 million. It's going to replace all the equipment that will operate statewide. It's important for 2 reasons. The first, as I said, is we have to maintain the performance levels that we're offering to the current state agencies, universities, and community colleges. The second one is that if we do not upgrade our equipment, there could be a relaxing of the service levels that our contractor has to provide for us relating to when a site goes down. So for example, if a site goes down now, they may have 4 hours to get it up, and I'm picking times. But if we don't do it, it could extend to 6. So you could have sites that are down longer. So it's important for us to continue to be relevant and keep upgrading our network, and that's what this project will do. Do you have any questions, or you want me to just move on to the next one?
How long have you all been online?
Our first site was migrated.
Well, we started migrating right at the end of 2019, and the first sites went full and running on a 2020.
Okay, so 2020 to 2023 is 3 years. So I thought you just said everything needs to be upgraded every 10 years. So what? Why are we going through a whole equipment replacement after 3 years?
This is the equipment that was purchased in 2015 originally. and was installed at that time. And it's been installed in waves as we go across. We also start to run into end-of-life issues with this particular equipment, so that the manufacturer will stop either manufacturing parts or, as you heard our previous testimony, that they won't service it anymore. So it's a life cycle issue.
Is there a penalty if there's no upgrade here?
The penalty that we would have would be that our service provider would have relaxed times to bring people back up to speed.
Okay.
So if that goes down from 4 hours now, it could be 6 hours or longer. And at some point, if we need to replace equipment, we would have to just replace that equipment. They would say it can't be serviced.
So you're looking at doing an entire replacement of every bit of equipment that you have?
Ultimately.
Okay, and what's the time span on that? Because I mean, if you purchased all this equipment in 2015, it didn't come on till 2019. I guess it was sitting in a box for 4 years, getting out of date. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to figure out what happened there, and do we want to make sure we don't get into that same situation again?
Yeah, we shouldn't run into that situation because it's exactly what you said. We were installing it as sites come online and the construction was completed. Because you'll recall there was a delay in the construction, so it was installed at that time.
Well, whose idea again was it to buy everything in 2015 before you could put the thing online?
That would have been the recommendation of our P3 partner and the decision of the administration at that time.
Okay.
One thing to keep in mind also, I need to add into this. Well, this 10-year interval has what's called a market testing process. So our contractor is in the process now of determining what equipment needs to be replaced and when it will need to be replaced and how much it will cost. So the price that we're presenting now is based on the estimate that we were given by our P3 partners back in 2015. So we can update you as that number as it changes.
Do we have the same P3 partner as we had in 2015 that gave us this bad advice?
Yes, we still have the same P3 partners.
I guess my second question would be why?
Well, we have a 30-year contract with them, so unless there is there's breach provisions, there's other options, but that's where we're at right now.
Co-chair?
I'm speechless. For once.
I know what you mean. Southworth.
I had one question, but are we done with it? We're still in the middle of presentation, aren't we?
I can answer questions now,
Okay.
or you can hold them as whatever.
Well, the only question I have right off the bat, because you mentioned speed and downtimes and all that. So just kindergarten level piece of information. What is our speed?
We generally offer 5 times the speed.
Right, for the agencies, we're giving them 5 times the speed they have today, but the speed of the core network, it's built on a 100 gig optical network that connects these rings. So 100 gig is the core speed of the equipment.
Can you put that in English? 100 gigabytes per. I don't know what you're saying.
100 gigabytes per second.
Per second. That's what I was hoping you were gonna say, but I just want to make sure I'm not making up stuff.
So that is how the core rings, the red lines we had on the screen earlier, connecting the 6 rings across the state. Those are all built on 100 gig technology with Fujitsu.
And then are you saying that that's the core and therefore there's something else as you go down the line and as we talk about last mile? Is that what you're going toward, or?
Right, so from out of those rings and you go out through the laterals to each of the sites, and then the sites vary based on the speed that they need to perform the different functions. So some sites are 25 meg, some sites go all the way up to 1 gig. Some of the university campuses are 10 gig. I believe the highest we have in right now is a 40 gig.
So talk to me about the ones that are 100 meg or less. How much percentage are we talking about?
It's a very small percentage. I can get that number. I cannot know off the top of my head. It's a fairly small percentage. It's under 100 meg.
Oh, because you just mentioned 25 meg, and that kind of obviously is where I was trying to go with this question, because we have been talking about broadband and the $1 billion that's going on there and the required speeds keep changing, getting more and more for the what we call baseline. And we're discussing 2015 equipment sitting around, and now you're also mentioning 2015 estimates on prices for replacements. And well, we've had a little bit of such a thing as inflation the last year or two that just, and I'm just thinking about, the reason why I didn't like the project in the first place is I felt like technology was outdated, and 30 years on a technology contract, to me is just insane. But what do we do when, but speed on broadband's faster than some of the pieces of this network, and we're talking about adding last mile still. So I guess that's going to be for the next slides or whatever. So we may hold our questions on that. So where I'm going with that. Thanks.
So keep in mind, our network only serves state agencies, community colleges, and public universities. We don't serve, KCNA does not serve last mile residents.
I think Co-Chair Tate had a question.
Yeah. So with this project, with the initial project, we're finished with the initial project.
Yeah, we got about 2 miles of fiber left to hang in far western Kentucky.
Okay. And so on bullet 4, it says this is the first phase of the next 3.
Yes.
So what are, is that going to be described in the next presentation, the next slides?
No, we were focused on this first biennium, the $12.9 million.
Mm-hmm.
The $44 million was the total price that we worked on with that our P3 partners provided to us. So the way we broke it down is construction has flown from the east to the west. So if you look at the map, you have like ring 1A and 2. And then so those would be the first that would be replaced because that was the first that was installed. Then it would be 1B and 5 and 3, and then it would roll on to ring 4. So that's why you're seeing it in stages.
So in other words, you're asking for 12, you're actually asking for $44 million.
Over the 6 years.
Over the next 6 years.
That's the estimate, right?
Yeah, and you've got a project plan for the next 6 years to make sure that we won't have a shelf life issue again with the parts.
That should come out in this market testing that our contractor's doing. Okay. They'll come in with new equipment, and we'll be looking at it again, frankly, in 2035. Mm-hmm. That would be the next stage to look at it, see has technology changed enough that we need to upgrade the equipment again so that we're having the same speeds that we need to have for our customers.
Yeah. So this is going to be a project that never ends, basically is what you're saying, because it's going to be a constant upgrade. We're either going to be upgrading phase 1, 2, 3. At one point we're going to be constantly upgrading parts of the phases.
I think that's not unique to this network. Mm-hmm. I think if you looked at any telecommunications network, that you would see the same thing. Mm-hmm. That there's always, technology is always changing,
Absolutely.
Always improving, and you're always moving to match that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Just real quick, apparently, Mr. Hendricks, the live stream is having difficulty picking you up. If you could possibly move the microphone a little bit closer. No. No, you're fine.
I thought you were going to tell me I had to do it all over.
No. We wouldn't put you through that. Please proceed.
Thank you. And again, anytime you have questions, feel free to stop me. That works for me just as well as waiting till the end. Our second project we're presenting to you is for infrastructure purchases. In layman's terms, we need to purchase replacement huts. Statewide, we have 20 nodes that are in communication shelters. It came to our attention a few years ago that they were falling apart, frankly. There was water leakage, there was mold, floors were collapsing, they had to be replaced. And that's the steps that we took to do that. It's not the proper place to have expensive telecommunications equipment, obviously. So what we've done is we've replaced these wooden huts with larger concrete huts. And we worked on that with Open Fiber, which is also known as a Celicom, that's the wholesaler. They're the ones who we worked on to replace them. So they purchased and replaced those huts. We're in them and they're in them now, and we need to get them back into the Commonwealth's control. Just so you know, we did pursue our rights against the manufacturer, the distributor, and our contractors. We resolved that ultimately at the Franklin Circuit Court. We also explored whether there was insurance coverage for this issue, but it was not a covered item. So we've kind of exhausted our opportunities to bring in additional money to make those payments. And this is the cost to purchase all 20 to get them back in our control. It just makes it easier for us if we have it. Right now we have to have an escort if we want to say one of our partners wants to come into that area. But once they're back in our control and we own them, then we'll have a better control. And it's as it was designed, that we would own the structures. And that one is $12.4 million. That's our last two projects. That's the end of our projects right there. Those are the two
So,
we're presenting.
just a quick, so you all don't own where the equipment is being stored?
Not right now. No, the replacement huts were placed on the same places that the others were.
Okay, who owns, are we leasing them, or what's the deal?
As part of the change wherein Open Fiber purchased them and installed them, we have a right to be in there.
Is Open Fiber the P3 people?
That's the wholesaler. That's the company with the contract to commercialize the additional capacity.
The 30-year, no?
Well, yeah, we have their contract is concurrent with that as well, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
and,
But they're not the construction arm. You gotta remember that.
so they, all right, but they got these, so they're responsible for selling the
The additional capacity.
Okay, because my understanding of the project was always, it's going to be the state network, but if we had extra bandwidth, we were going to sell it locally through distributors to the public to some degree. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's not been done and probably won't be?
No, they are, Open Fiber is in operation right now. I don't know how many customers they have right now, but they have connected people to the network.
Anyone else? Senator Southworth has one.
Yeah, I want to go back to the Accelicom question, because I felt like last year we got asked for money to get these huts replaced. There was like, I don't remember, 5 out of 9 huts were moldy and dilapidated as you described. And now I'm not sure, maybe all the huts have been replaced and the whole litigation or whatnot, but where did the money for the huts replacement come from? Because I could be mistaken, but I felt like we were asked for money, or somewhere I heard it was state money. We were trying to get money together to replace these huts.
I don't recall us requesting funding for that. The funding for it came through a change that we did with Open Fiber. They can install equipment under our contract, and they are the ones who did that. They paid the cost for it, and we have the right to repurchase them.
Okay, so there's 20 huts?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's $12.4 million.
Yes, ma'am.
So these huts are a lot more in cost than I recall talking about last year. So how big are these huts?
I think they're 12 by 28. They're, I was at about twice the size of our original huts. Yes.
Are they plated with 24 karat gold, or what's the deal with the, quick math here. What are we at here? $600,000 per hut?
I can't remember exactly what each one cost individually. We can get you that information if you would like it. But they're made of concrete. The other huts were made of wood. That's why they leaked.
And just to clarify, Accelicom doesn't have the same bid requirements and so forth that the state procurement does. So if they're paying for these huts, and then we turn around and we have to pay whatever they're charging, do we have any idea how much overage or profit they're making off of us rebuying these huts?
I can't recall I have to go back and look at it. I can't recall there being a profit aspect to it. They do get a what's called a rate of return on capital assets that they are capturing, which is 8% of their cost. But other than that, there's not like a skim that they get off the top. We knew what the prices were, the cost for removal and installation and those kinds of things that were all included in that. We can give you a breakdown of that.
Okay, sure. I felt like, and maybe coming back to my mind, because I specifically looked into this and I started reading the Accelicom contract over this issue. And maybe it was 2 summers ago. I may be mistaken. It wasn't last summer.
It was 2021 we testified.
Yeah, that's possible. But it's all coming back to me, and I just don't remember that being the number. And I could be off, but it seems like to me, as the Capital Planning Board trying to distribute Commonwealth funds that have been basically procured at rates and things that we never really had control over so much, and now we're trying to take control over it. It seems almost like a, I don't know, there's a whole lot of weird stuff that could happen or is there, and I'm not sure what it is, but that's all I've got really questions wise there. The only other question I had, Mr. Chairman, it may or may not relate specifically to these two capital requests, but it relates to the overall budget. So to me, it does relate. The last we knew that most, it seemed like, if not all of the staff for KCNA was funded through the general fund and not by actual restricted funds within the agency. And there was some discussion about, you know, is Celicom's business going to take off enough to be able to start, you know, generating funds within the agency or whatnot? Where are we at on that?
So as part of their contract, we get a share of their revenues. 90% of it for a dark fiber, 90% of the gross, 75 and 85% for a lit fiber service. It was our understanding we would receive some funding. We have received some for one dark fiber lease. Frankly, it's not very much money. As far as a public date, the only public date we have is 2032, which is the date they told the Legislative Oversight Committee that came out in the broadband report in December of 2022. So according to Celicom, it may be 2032.
Are you saying there's not going to be a payment until 2032?
That's when that's according to that report, that's when they would see revenue share coming from lit fiber services. That's the date that they gave the Legislative Oversight Committee. They did not discuss that date with KCNA.
So they have a contract with you to do revenue sharing and you've not had a discussion about it?
No, we've had many discussions about it.
But we don't know how much or when?
The only discussions we can continue to have with them is when are you going to provide it? We trust but verify the information that they provide us. But the information that they've said publicly is 2032.
And that maybe in the contract is 2032, or I guess I'm failing to connect.
It's based on the amount of sales and the type of sales that they have.
So they're just maybe doing projections on when they think they're going to have these types of sales.
That's my understanding of what that 2032 date is.
And they aren't having any sales. Are there types of sales that we don't have a commission on?
No, it's either lit fiber services or dark fiber services.
So they have to do sales, but there may be like a deferral period before we get our commission or whatever. I guess I'm failing to see why we're 9 years away.
It's based on, for lit
seeing a
fiber
dime.
services, it's based on a net revenue.
Okay.
it's
So they think
75.
they're in the hole for the next 9 years, so we're not going to see anything.
That's the public date that they provide.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's see. We have the Kentucky.
Thank you.
Please identify yourselves and proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Wheeler and advisory board members. I'm Sandy Williams, Executive Director with the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority. With me today, I have Milward Dedman, Deputy Executive Director with KIA, and Jim Carpenter, the Authority's Treasurer. This year marks a special milestone for the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority. This is our 35th year in service to the utilities and ratepayers, our citizens of the Commonwealth. And over that 35-year period, since 1988, the authority has provided over $2.79 billion in funding commitments, supporting over $4.18 billion in infrastructure projects. That averages out to just under $120 million of infrastructure projects a year. The good news, these funds are revolving. When KIA makes a low-interest loan, and we subsequently receive a loan repayment, we can then turn around and re-loan those dollars. We operate just like a bank in that regard, and to date, we have had 0 loan defaults. That's the good news. The best news is the majority the majority of these dollars are federal dollars that Kentucky has access to because of the state match provided through Kentucky's general fund. In addition to our loan programs, KA manages the Water Resource Information System, which gathers locally sourced infrastructure data, which is used for planning purposes to encourage regionalization, consolidation, and partnerships with the goal of making safe drinking water and wastewater treatment available to all Kentuckians. The Infrastructure Authority's 6-year capital plan embraces the goals of securing all available federal funds for infrastructure, keeping our citizens safe, and moving toward the efficient use of all available funding. Oh, sorry, Liz, thanks. The general fund portion of the plan includes the required state match to receive the federal grants for our Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which we call Fund A, and our Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which we call Fund F. This match has been provided to KIA since our inception in 1988. You may notice the requested match is higher in the first 4 years of the capital plan. This is because of the additional federal funding provided to the SRF programs through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. This law provided additional funds through the existing programs for states to address the removal of cancer-causing forever chemicals called PFAS from drinking water and the removal of lead service lines, both public and private side water lines. The final year of additional bill funding is federal fiscal year 2026. The amount that KIA needs to provide the state match in the first biennium is just over $25.9 million, $36.2 million in the second biennium, and $13.5 in the third biennium. We're also requesting consideration of an additional $25 million to capitalize KIA's state loan program called the Infrastructure Revolving Fund, or Fund B. This program provides funding to projects that are not eligible for the federally assisted programs and is targeted to infrastructure projects that support economic development and growth. The remainder of the general fund portion of the plan includes $10 million, which would be an initial capital injection into the newly created Water and Wastewater Service Regionalization Account. This account will help utilities who are struggling to maintain operations on their own to lift themselves up and find regional or partnership solutions for more efficient management and operations. The federal fund portion of the plan includes federal capitalization grants from EPA for the regular and bipartisan infrastructure law portions of the federal grants. The total federal grants available in the first biennium, just over $237 million, followed by $262 million in the second biennium and $67.5 in the third biennium. The agency bond portion of the plan includes $30 million each biennium for leverage bonds for each of our 2 federally assisted programs. These bonds are not obligations of the Commonwealth and are backed solely by the loan repayments of the underlying loans. This authorization would only be used under 2 specific circumstances. First, there is demand in the programs for the additional funding. And second, our financial advisors tell us that the additional debt service would not cut into any of the federal grant money or any of the state match funding. The Kentucky Infrastructure Authority has provided low-interest loan funding for more than 1,200 projects, covering all corners of the Commonwealth, from Pikeville to Paducah and Louisville to Logan Todd, projects that stretch along the Ohio River in Ashland, Maysville, Covington, and Brandenburg, and can be found locally in Frankfort, Lawrenceburg, and Lexington. And these low-interest loan programs help keep utility rates low and provide necessary public infrastructure.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Senator Southworth.
I'm looking at the regionalization fund. I know we worked on this this last year, and there's maybe more things coming for next year. This looks like we've got it here. My question really is, I feel like there are a lot of people out there that have serious needs, right? All these projects, we all know this. And I felt like, regionalization is just a tool in that toolbox. But you're looking, from what I can tell here, it looks like we're talking about different pots of money. So maybe I'm mistaken, but if we have one pot of money that's specifically on regionalization and a different pot of money that's on, bad infrastructure, is it possible then that a, piece of equipment that's only 60%, decent, needs upgrades, and we get it up to 85, gets money out of the regionalization account, whereas something that's down in the 15 percentile, we need to get up to 50, doesn't get funded because there's something at the 8% percentile over in Martin County or whatever, right? So I'm just wondering, is there a way to combine these so that the worst is getting served first? Or does it have to be this way because of federal matches and so forth?
That's a very involved question. Thank you. And it's a very good question. So the way the federal program works, we have to keep the federal program separate. And we were hoping to use the funds in the regionalization account to supplement or maybe provide carrots to help the utilities qualify for the federal funding. And some of the federal program says they have to exhibit technical, managerial, and financial assistance. So if a utility were operating at a substandard level, whether they have a notice of violation or an agreed order with the Division of Water, or even worse, a consent decree through the federal government. So that would be one way to determine they weren't operating effectively or efficiently. And we might be able to provide funds out of this regionalization account to get them ready, maybe help provide, let's say their problem was inflow and infiltration. So let's say their water pipes are leaking and they're producing 100 gallons, but they only sell 25 gallons because they're losing 75 gallons to holes in the pipes. So we could use this program to help them fix the holes and then get them ready, showing technical, so then they would have technical capacity and managerial capacity to qualify for the other low interest loan funds through our larger pools.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes, Director Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sandy. When was the last time that we authorized what you call leverage bonds, where we use the existing repayment stream as the debt service for another bond issue?
Thank you, Secretary Hicks. I believe that was in the 2018-2020 budget.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for your presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Tourism, Arts, and Heritage. You're the next contestant. Welcome, and please identify yourselves and proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Lindy Casebreer, the Secretary of the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet.
Good afternoon. I'm Mona Jewett, Chief of Staff for the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet.
Good
Good afternoon. I'm Melissa Brewer, Executive Director of Finance for the Tourism Arts and Heritage Cabinet.
I think the mic may not be on. Could you please? Are they working now?
It is.
Good deal. All right.
So the mission of the Tourism Arts and Heritage Cabinet is to support every agency within that cabinet and with the promotion and the development of Kentucky's tourism, arts, and heritage as a mechanism to foster economic growth, education, and employment for our communities throughout the Commonwealth. Slide 3. Our cabinet is committed to promoting and preserving our state's rich heritage as well as continuing Kentucky's long history of being a premier travel destination for all travelers to enjoy. Cabinet serves as a top tourism agency, collaborating with our local tourism partners to promote our tourism, arts, and heritage opportunities through legislation, tourism development, marketing, and outreach. Our cabinet operations include 44 state parks, including 1,517 buildings, and this coming year in 2024 will be the 100th anniversary of our Kentucky State Park system. And in that is 17 resort lodges, 14 historic sites, 13 golf courses, 34 pools and beaches, 15 marinas, 32 campgrounds, 12 equestrian competition rings, 80 horses, including one Kentucky Derby winner, and over 1.5 million square feet of event space, and 55 wildlife management areas totaling over 161,000 acres.
All right, I'm going to talk about our maintenance pools. Our maintenance pools allow us to address emergency repairs quickly so that our revenue-generating business is not hindered. Funding our agency's emergency maintenance is critical. These funds are vital to protect the Commonwealth's facilities. Kentucky State Parks are so important to Kentucky's $11.2 billion tourism industry. Our parks not only bring visitors, but drive revenue and create employment all across the state. These capital projects are a priority and will preserve park lodges while also addressing structural and mechanical deficiencies. This list includes key items such as pool repairs, marina repairs, ADA improvements, well, all things that encompass the visitor experience. If our parks are not up to date, it not only compromises visitation, but it also puts our guests and our staff in danger. For example, many park life safety systems are outdated and have numerous problems at our lodges, cottages, and conference centers. As the Secretary stated earlier, the department has 44 state parks, so as you go through the list, you'll quickly recognize the desperate need for upgrades and repairs.
Some of these items may look familiar to you. $40 million toward building system improvements, $22 million toward accommodation upgrades, and $22 million toward recreational amenities were all items that were included in House Bill 1 during the 2022 legislative session, but were not allocated in House Joint Resolution 76 during this last legislative session. Without this funding, Kentucky State Parks is unable to make the critical infrastructure needs and the sorely needed accommodation and recreational improvements.
The Kentucky Artisan Center is a complex opened to the public in 2003. Since that time, 20 years has passed, and the building is in need of renovations and repairs. The Artisan Center subsidizes over 850 artists throughout the state and sells their products. The center averages 300,000 visitors each year and 200 to 300 motor coaches per year. Wear and tear has occurred to the displays, kitchen components, appliances, as well as outdoor equipment. This equipment needs to be updated and replaced as repairs have become so frequent that they're no longer financially feasible to repair. To continue to bring travelers to the center, tackling outdoor needs like updating equipment and building an outdoor venue for live concerts will greatly increase the number of visitors and continue to support Kentucky artists.
Kentucky Performing Arts. Kentucky Performing Arts operates 3 venues, the Kentucky Center, the Brown Theater, and Old Forester's Paris Town Hall. In addition to the performances in those facilities, Kentucky Performing Arts outreach programs bring arts to children and adults in dozens of community centers, healthcare facilities, and schools in all of Kentucky's educational regions. During the 21-22 season, KPA reported an attendance of over 248,000 visitors, holding 375 events and collecting over $25 million in revenue. KPA's revenue contributes more than $15.8 million to our local economy in an average year, with the patrons spending additional $10.5 million annually. Cultural tourists come, they stay longer, and they spend more money, and that's we have the data to back that up. And to support performances, it is critical to invest in technical equipment systems that are up to date in industry standards. The manufacturer no longer supports the systems in place, replacement parts cannot be sourced, and the center is running the risk of certain failures during performances. Failure of these systems will cause performances to be halted and will be catastrophic to the reputation and the financial performance of the Kentucky Center, now in its 40th year, not to mention the safety issues for the staff and visitors. The 3 projects listed will greatly enhance the visitor experience and increase visitation in our tourism experience.
The Kentucky History Center and Museums has welcomed more than 1 million visitors since its anchor building, the Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History, opened in 1999. The Historical Society operates 3 buildings, the Kentucky Old State Capitol, the Kentucky Military History Museum, and the Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History. KRS 171.315 creates a priority for maintenance of the Kentucky Historical Society headquarters and the Old State Capitol, as shall be the highest priority among other responsibilities of the state for capital construction, maintenance, or security. Funding for the Old State Capitol will address issues necessary for the proper preservation and protection of the properties and those who visit. The initial scope covers plaster preservation, lighting, electrical upgrades, lead paint abatement, exterior landscaping, and wayfinding improvements. The Kentucky Historical Society remaining renovation projects will create a modern research environment to serve their academic and genealogist audience, renovate orientation and customer service spaces, upgrade campus-wide signage and restrooms, and make safety improvements in order to stay competitive and encourage visitation.
Now I'm going to talk about the Kentucky Horse Park. In 2021, the Horse Park welcomed over 770,000 visitors. They had over 50,000 nights of camping and held over 80 equestrian events. The campground request is much needed. The campground is almost always booked, and it's a great revenue generator for the park. Projects listed include the entertainment pavilion, the campground, as mentioned earlier, the restaurant, the competition barns, and the Alltech Arena. These investments will preserve and increase visitation. Other projects listed include the International Museum of the Horse, the Hall of Champions, the Equine Education Center, and a paving/parking project. And these investments will, of course, enhance the visitor experience at the park. Next, I'll talk about Kentucky Venues. Kentucky Venues manages 2 of the most significant event venues in Louisville. These venues host approximately 340 events annually and generate $330 million in economic impact. This year, they have 12 crucial capital projects on their list, and they would like to highlight the 2 following. Phase 2 land planning and renovation, and the backup power supply. The Kentucky Exposition Center is at a crossroads due to aging infrastructure and increased competition. KEC has faced frequent power failures during major events due to old equipment and other conditions, and that ask is on their list as well. And lastly, we'll talk about the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. Their programs produce $6 billion in total economic impact and support over 70,000 jobs in the state. The projects listed will help the department to continue to conserve and enhance Kentucky's fish and wildlife. One project is the Ballard Big Pump Project, and it's required to effectively manage water levels on wetland units for waterfowl hunting. Also on the list is a new dining hall project that will replace a 1950s structure at Camp Earl Wallace in Wayne County. Another project is the Ataya property, and it's a legacy purchase providing 54,000 acres of public access to hunting, fishing, and wildlife watching in Knox, Bell, and Leslie counties. The list also includes 2 buildings to be built on the Frankfort campus, the headquarters here, to protect equipment and to provide office space.
Most of the leadership of these agencies are behind us today. And as you can see by our slides and our testimony, that the influence, the impact, and the benefit to Kentucky's economy is vast, but so are our challenges. So the capital plan, our capital plan, is one of the largest in state government, and it's only less than that of the university systems. But we feel like that the requests are merited, and that in order to be competitive and to continue the mission of the cabinet and to share Kentucky with the rest of the nation and the world, that these upgrades and this investment is really critical. But we thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today in your time.
Thank you, Secretary. Anybody have any questions? All right. Y'all did a good presentation. Nobody had anything. Okay, and for our final presenter, we have the Transportation Cabinet. If you will make your way to the front and make sure your microphone's on, identify yourselves, and proceed. All right, ma'am. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed. Make sure your microphone's on.
Okay. My name is Robin Brewer. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Budget and Fiscal Management in the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. The mission of the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet is to provide a safe, efficient, environmentally sound, and fiscally responsible transportation system that delivers economic opportunity and enhances the quality of life in Kentucky. In support of this mission, as provided by authority in KRS Chapter 177, the Transportation Cabinet is responsible for the construction, reconstruction, and maintenance of the Commonwealth's multimodal transportation system. The system includes more than 27,600 miles of highways, which consists of approximately 1,400 miles of interstates and parkways, 3,900 miles of primary roads, 22,300 miles of secondary roads, and 9,069 bridges. There are approximately 49 billion vehicle miles traveled in the Commonwealth every year, 85% of which are carried on this state-maintained system. The Cabinet also provides direction for the Department of Aviation, which provides oversight, safety inspections, and partial funding for 58 public airports across the Commonwealth, in close coordination with the Federal Aviation Administration. KYTC oversees all motor vehicle and driver license procedures for more than 3 million drivers in the Commonwealth. The Cabinet relies heavily on information technology to efficiently provide needed services to the taxpayers of Kentucky. For more than over a decade, the use of technology has become more prevalent through the Cabinet, to the extent that it is now an indispensable part of the everyday work environment. Integrating technology into almost every cabinet process has provided substantial and immediate benefit to those processes and has enabled the cabinet to accomplish more work and increase productivity with fewer staff. Technology and its appropriate deployment remain key to the attainment of the cabinet's mission to provide an efficient transportation system. Successful delivery of these services depends upon the existing network of employees utilizing approximately 1,238 buildings and facilities located in all 120 Kentucky counties. As a result, the 2024-2030 capital plan for the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet includes 4 primary components or categories. The first is ongoing maintenance and preservation on existing but aging maintenance facilities, salt structures, rest areas, and way stations throughout the state, as well as minor road work on state parks grounds. In addition, there's a maintenance pool request specifically for renovating and rehabilitating existing district office buildings. The district office buildings are facing challenges not only due to the high cost of construction, but the changing pace of technology, smaller workforce, and norms for daily working space necessary to conduct the cabinet's business. The second category is IT. We have one IT-related need to update and maintain existing programs used throughout the cabinet for day-to-day operations through the use of AASHTOWare. KYTC currently subscribes to the AASHTOWare project, bridge maintenance, safety analyst, and pavement management application. This project would allow the cabinet to stay current with changes in federal regulations and technology by enabling the cabinet to implement new versions of the AASHTOWare software suite on a regular basis. Many of these products are moving from client server-based to web-based, requiring a more in-depth upgrade path. The third category is construction of approximately 34 new maintenance facilities, salt structures, equipment garages, traffic barns, and roadside maintenance buildings throughout the state. The maintenance facilities, for example, not only house those buildings that supplement roadway preservation staff, brine generators, salt storage structures, equipment sheds, engineering section offices, etc., but also contain structures used by traffic and agronomy staff. The primary goal is focused on the safety, well-being, and health of employees, as well as striving to obtain compliance with ever-changing current building codes. This capital plan being presented is driven to replace or rehabilitate structures which are well beyond their intended lifespans. The structures have not kept pace with technology and environmental norms, and those structures can no longer allow the cabinet to provide services to the traveling public in a safe and responsible fashion. Also included are the construction and replacement of some welcome centers and rest areas across the state, as well as funding for expansion of truck parking at some of the rest areas and rest havens to increase safety of motorists. And the fourth category is maintenance needs for the Capital City Airport and the Department of Aviation for maintenance on aging aircraft and aging airport facilities, as well as the construction of a new terminal building, various new hangars, including a new maintenance hangar, and the replacement of some outdated aircraft. Overall, the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet's capital needs over the next 6 years total approximately $242 million in road funds, $11.7 million in general funds, $49.3 million in federal funds, and $20.3 million in restricted funds. And I have some folks in the audience that are from different areas in the cabinet in case you have specific questions about anything.
Any questions? Maybe just, okay, Director Hicks, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Wanted to point out you've got a number of projects where in the current budget you were given design funds, mostly $500,000 for a number of structures for which you're then requesting, I'll say, the construction portion of that in this,
Correct.
this next biennium.
That is correct, yes.
So I believe you say we own 7 aircraft in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Is that right?
I believe that is the case, yes.
What are the various ones used for? Obviously, I know the governor goes in one. I mean, is there multiple? What are the other aircraft used for?
You want to come on over? We have Commissioner Carter here from Department of Aviation.
So the question was, what are the aircraft used for?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the department actually has 5 aircraft, 3 airplanes, a Piper Navajo and 2 Cessna aircraft, and then 2 Bell helicopters. And those aircraft are used for several purposes. We have a contract with the Federal Mining Agency, and so the helicopters are used to look at mine reclamation permits and the like. We have contracts, or I guess interagency relationships with like Fish and Wildlife, where we'll do elk counts or waterfowl counts for the Fish and Wildlife Department. And then the Navajo, the aircraft, the fixed-wing aircraft are used by the department when we have meetings at airports and travel around the state. The Navajo serves as a backup in the event the governor's aircraft through the state police aren't available for his travel, or the lieutenant governor. The state police, Senator Wheeler, have a number of aircraft, but they're essentially managed by the state police, but the department does maintain their aircraft. And so part of what you see in the maintenance budget is for the maintenance of both the department's aircraft as well as the state police.
Okay. Senator Southworth.
I heard audibly in your presentation you mentioned welcome centers and rest areas, and I'm trying to pick through the paperwork to find those, and I see one like maintenance hidden in there, but I thought you said construction. So can you maybe highlight what is in here on the welcome centers or rest areas?
There are some projects, I don't know if they're in the summary that you received, but those are primarily federally funded, or those would be how we would hope to fund those. And there are like I said, we do have a request in here for $6 million each biennium for increased truck parking capacity. We also have repairs and upgrades to the Clark County rest area on I-64 eastbound. We have a new welcome center on I-24 eastbound in McCracken County. We also have a new rest area facility on I-75 northbound and southbound in Rockcastle County. And then we also have more truck parking expansion at the Welcome Center on I-65 in Bullitt County. Also at the Shelby County and Laurel County ones as well.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chairman? So in relation to the overall maintenance and upgrades of existing rest centers, is that lumped in somewhere like in a maintenance pool, or do we have that sectioned out somewhere? Because what I'm kind of thinking of when you mention that is there are a few rest centers in Kentucky that I feel are very embarrassing, and I don't know when and where those are in a list somewhere of getting kind of revamped.
So we do have a maintenance pool that we typically receive every biennium for repair of rest areas and waste stations. It's for both purposes. Currently, we're asking for $8 million each year for that, and that is paid for with road fund dollars. So that's just for a little bit more minor repairs, whereas for the welcome centers and the expansion of truck parking, those would be more substantial. So we've listed those separately. But we always, I absolutely agree with you, we always have way more projects for rest areas than we do funding. We have a waiting list, and we're constantly trying to narrow it down as much as possible based on need.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, seeing nothing further, thank you, ma'am. productive meeting today, 7 presentations, so I know it was a somewhat long meeting, but I thought we got some good information. The next meeting date is scheduled for 3 p.m. on Thursday, July 20th in this same meeting room, and we will review all post-secondary education facilities capital plan. So that should be very interesting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All right, motion. So adjourn. Oh.
Thank you very much.
That was lengthy, wasn't it? But, you know, I don't know how it could have gotten by any quicker, really.
No,
No.
it was a lot of information.
What's that? Oh, I'm telling you. Yeah.
That's all right.